Welcome to Come and See, your podcast for finding truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by All for Jesus Living Waters Ministry. With host and founder Richard Case and co-host and retreat leader Kathy Ricconi. Join us every weekday at this time to discuss news, spend time in the Word, and receive answers to your personal questions about living life in God's truth. And now your host, Richard Case.
Well, good morning, Kathy. This is Monday. We're taping ahead of time, but this is going to air on Monday, December now the 6th, so it's into the second week of December, heading toward Christmas. So we're going to be praying that everybody enjoys it, particularly in this discussion that we're having about anxiety. Interesting enough, and it's really funny to me, Linda and I learned a long time ago how to handle this, but the holidays, interesting enough, bring up a lot of anxiety.
They do for a lot of people.
Yeah, a couple things. One is, again, anything that changes our routine, which, by the way, in today's life, having a routine, even by itself, is really tough to do. So we're trying to manage that. And a couple things, by the way, that's pushing that is businesses, because they're dealing with stress and they don't want to spend more money by adding people, they lay more stress on the employees they have.
Right, absolutely.
So it's work longer, work harder, do double duty. We were just talking this morning about a couple that were, both of them, they both are working. Their kids are in school, so they're able to do that. Both of them are what was called is being used as, they phrased it as being used as pack mules.
No.
That they just keep loading more and more stuff on them. And they're both really wore out because of it. So that's adding a lot of stress to it. We have the stress of the world that we're facing with vaccines and being able to do things and not do things. We're headed to the Trans-Siberian Orchestra with our grandkids.
Oh, fun!
And they're musicians, so they really appreciate excellent music, and they're excellent, really superb. Well, it's at an arena in Denver that requires either
you're probably gonna have to get tested,
a vaccine or tested. So I got to arrange all that to be tested to get it go ahead of time and get tested, and so that we can even just enter.
Right.
And because everyone is going to have to prove it, we already know. Well, guess what? The lines getting in are going to be longer. Because it's not just get through. It's, well, you got to prove that you got this thing. So we're getting ready for that, and that's going to be stressful. So everything's becoming more difficult. And by the way, I think you and I have talked about this. Supply chain issues are big problems. Dan was just sharing with that this morning on our call.
Yeah, absolutely.
That his business is having that issue, and things that we're trying to look at buying for gifts, it's not available.
Right.
And it's not just there. So, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and even you add on to, so those are kind of some of the normal things you're seeing. And then you put the holiday time in,
right.
And you've got more demands on your time, even from a social standpoint, more social gatherings going on, trying to fit in shopping and this sort of thing, which brings with it an underlying financial stress for a lot of people as well. And then you put family dynamics in as families gather. And sometimes that is a beautiful thing. And sometimes it is a very, very stressful thing. I was talking to my ladies about some of the things coming up this week and what they're going to be navigating. And there's some pretty difficult family relationships that then just, the holiday season keeps that as what you say, that low level infection, but that raises it up quite a bit, you know?
Yeah. So the stress of it all, interesting enough, as you approach the holiday, actually can be more stressful than not. And businesses trying to get things done, family dynamics, like you say, change of routine. added things. I got to go to this party, and I got to go do this, and I got to go here have this. And
even fun things.
even
It
things
adds.
that could be fun can tend to be, oh no, another one. So as we deal with this, we've talked about that stress causes worry, fear, and anxiety, and it can be just things that are different. That's one level. Things that are actually happening at the moment that we're facing with things that are just oppressive, because I don't see an obvious solution to it.
Right.
And even within families and or things that have happened in my business or happened in my life or happened in relationships, is they're just not obvious. And because of that, we tend to go to the end. What I call the end line of it is, I project that this isn't going to work out really well, and it's going to maybe cause even more trouble, or we're never going to get a resolution to this. And then I go to worry. Or I have opposition, like we talked about with Jehoshaphat, where the enemy's coming against him and it's bigger than him. I have opposition. I have things going on in my business. We've got a few things in our pharmaceutical business with state boards, where the state boards are being unreasonable. Well, that's opposition, and it's big. It's bigger than us, because we can't just say, "Hey, come on, do it my way." They're saying, "We're in charge here. You have to do it our way, and we're gonna have this difficult issue." So God says, "Yeah, you're gonna have a fear about that, because this could turn into a difficult thing." So it's okay to have the fear and have the worry, and even to be anxious. He said, but don't let your heart stay in the verse there. My peace, and this is in John 16:33. Our main primary verse is, let me give you my peace, that only I can give, not as the world gives. Don't let your heart be troubled and fearful. So that means, well, then we have to process with God to not stay in the words there is, don't stay in a place of worry and trouble and fearful, but rather come to me and let me give you my shalom, my peace. Why? Because I have a resolution for everything. So we've talked about, again, believe that God is going to resolve it. Then we got to learn to go to trust. I got to trust that, because what we want to know, by the way, and this is important. Okay, I got a problem. Okay, I'm willing to go to God. Okay, God, what's the answer?
Right.
And I'd like this resolved tomorrow, by the way. So God said, well, trust is that I am going to resolve this, but it's in my timing and in my way. And you even talked about this, that God had given you a word last year. My ways are not your ways, and you got to learn this. And are you willing to let me give you resolution, not you? And so trust, I got to learn to trust, which means I trust in spite of not having an answer or a direct answer or an outcome yet, but it's going to happen. So I trust that. And he said the way to do that is hold on, stay with me, hold fast to me, cling to me, walk with me. I'll deliver it. We've talked last time about the aspect of seeking. Okay, now we move into that phase of seeking specific answers for this issue that I have. And God says, I'll answer you with clarity. Yes, I'll resolve specifically your situation. Now start to seek it, which means look to him and not anywhere else, which, by the way, is usually ourself. Well, I got an answer. Let me try this. And of course, it may not work. It usually doesn't work. He said, seek me. And then we talked about, to jumpstart it, it's this aspect of sacred assembly, of call people together with you for the purpose of repentance. And repentance is strictly, I'm going to stop trying to figure this out myself. And I'm going to come together with a heart of contrition to hear what God has to say. And I'm going to, and a sacred assembly is gather people around you to facilitate that. Since God doesn't ask us, interesting enough, to do that alone. He
Right.
said, call your circle around you, call your family, call your spouse, call your inner circle around you, and go through a time of of understanding. And mourning is recognizing, yeah, I've got a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's okay. Now let's go seek what God has to say. And I think you actually had someone talk to you about this. It raises up the question, and then we can get into the detail of this about sacred assembly and what does that look like. And what was your question that came up?
Right. Yeah. So my question really is this, and it's from our standpoint. I just thought this would be a great example to talk through what this would look like. We have some dear friends who recently have gone through abiding and are actually facing a really difficult situation with their son, who's dealing with a lot of anxiety, and it's impacting the entire family dynamic. And so as our heart breaks over watching them go through this, and I'm learning this alongside you as we're doing the podcast, I'm learning a lot of this as well. And so I'm struck by the idea, okay, if we would like to invite them to come to a sacred assembly and really come around them and seek God on what he has to say about the situation for them, what would that actually look like? So talk me through, like, let's be specific in this case with our friends. First of all, it would be us initiating it, not them. So
Yeah.
that's a little different potentially too, but can we use that as just a baseline example? Okay, if we want to be able to come around them, God's burdened our heart for what they're going through, what would it look like to apply this to this situation?
Yep. And the question again is, and we can look at this on both sides of it, and that is, how can I be a participant stimulator of sacred assembly when interesting enough the issue is about somebody else,
Right.
and they're the ones who are in great stress, but God is calling me, will you facilitate a sacred assembly with that person?
Mm-hmm.
So we'll talk about that. And then the other side of it is, if you're in the one in great stress,
Mm-hmm.
or anxiety, worry, and fear, then you call a sacred assembly. And
Right.
what does that look like? And it really looks like the same on both, and we just need to look at which direction we're coming at. So let's go to, again, we had talked about in Joel, it says, call a sacred assembly.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've gone to Isaiah 58 now, that describes really the process of that. So let's talk about that and bring it to practicality. So if you would, let's read it again, Isaiah 58, 6 through 14.
Perfect. Is this not the fast that I choose, to loose the bonds of wickedness, to undo the straps of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, and to break every yoke? Is it not to share your bread with the hungry and bring the homeless poor into your house? When you see the naked, to cover him, and not to hide yourself from your own flesh? Then shall your light break forth like the dawn, and your healing shall spring up speedily. Your righteousness shall go before you. The glory of the Lord shall be your rear guard. Then you shall call, and the Lord will answer. You shall cry, and he will say, here I am. If you take away the yoke from your midst, and the pointing of the finger and speaking wickedness, if you pour yourself out for the hungry and satisfy the desire of the afflicted, then shall your light rise in the darkness, and your gloom be as the noonday. And the Lord will guide you continually and satisfy your desire in scorched places and make your bones strong. And you shall be like a watered garden, like a spring of water whose waters do not fail. Your ancient ruins shall be rebuilt. You shall raise up the foundations of many generations. You shall be called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of streets to dwell in. If you turn back your foot from the Sabbath, from doing your pleasure on my holy day, and call the Sabbath a delight, and the holy day of the Lord honorable, if you honor it, not going your own ways, or seeking your own pleasure, or talking idly, then you shall take delight in the Lord, and I will make you ride on the heights of the earth. I will feed you with the heritage of Jacob your father, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken.
Yeah. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he says, a fast, you call a fast.
Mm-hmm.
Now remember, a fast is not limited to just not eating food,
Mm-hmm.
but rather it's a break from your routine. And it's bringing concentration to the process of what God says he wants to do, which is,
Right.
I'm going to lead you to freedom. I'm going to break the yoke that's burdening you. I'm going to cast off the heaviness that you're carrying. And so set aside a special time of focus.
And really a place of freedom from distraction, and intentionality, and setting your eyes and your heart and your ears to God and seeking his wisdom.
Yes. And let me help describe the fast so that we don't get caught up in the fast. It would be, okay, well then, if I have somebody like a child or a friend and they're struggling, now they don't even know anything about it. They're not going to initiate calling a fast because they're struggling all by themselves, and they need great help. They're not going to call it, so we're going to call it. Okay, so it's not, well, okay, we're going to get together with you and we're not going to eat for the next 3 days so that we can get this thing fixed. No. It's calling a fast is we are going to facilitate a focus. The purpose of the focus is strictly to walk with God. And we're going to do it in a way that or we're inviting, if we're the ones that understand this, a time of focus. And this, as I've experienced it, is now it's going to go on. It could go on for days, weeks, and months. Now it's not contiguous. So, okay, well, that means I'm going to stop eating for the next 2 months. No, it's I'm giving attention to this issue, and I'm going to call fasting or times where we're not going to get distracted, but we're going to bring focus to this issue. So it could look like an hour at a time. It could look like a couple hours at a time. It could be a regularity. And the key is that you don't quit on it until what? And think about what
until there's resolution. Until he answers.
What did God say? Go back to the first part of the verse, and in verse 6 to 8 there, what did God say he's going to do?
He wants to break the yoke and set you free. So until it's done.
In other words, stay with it until it's done.
Yeah.
And it's bringing continual focus as you're led step by step by step. If you're calling it, you might be able to process it a little bit further. If you're calling it for somebody else, you got to go first step, second step, third step, and we got to deal with it. So he said, I'm going to break the yoke and lead you to freedom. So you call it, and what you and your spouse or you and your family would do is, we kind of understand what's going on here. We don't have a resolution, but we know God does. So what are you doing? I got to bring them into a place where we can hear God's answer. Even with somebody that isn't even used to it, doesn't have a heart for it, is struggling with it. But the one thing they do have, the burden. They have the burden, and they're anxious. They're not going to deny that. Yeah, I'm anxious. I'm worried. I'm fearful. I have anxiety. Okay. So what we do is we call it together, and then we start by having that person, and it could be us if we're calling it, share what is the burden. What exactly is the burden? So you would say to this son, and you might even have him do this and say, and this is how I approach it a lot. By the way, I'm dealing with a lot of people who have this right now. And the way I started is I said, well, write down what you would describe as your burden. Why are things heavy to you? What is it? What's going on in your heart, your emotion, your mind that is causing you to go to worry, fear, and anxiety? Just write it out. So I have them write it out, and they do. And I say, now be as pure as you can. And don't censor anything, and don't evaluate anything. Just share what it is. Okay. And they generally, people that are in that spot are looking for some relief. So they generally are, okay, I'll do that. I can do that. And then you write it out. Then you get together, and either I'm doing this on the phone or in person. Okay, send me what you wrote. Now we're gonna look at that, and what you do. If you're the one calling the sacred assembly, you're not the one in stress, but somebody else is. I'm receiving that, and I pray, Father, show me where these are, and what's at the root of this, and how would you want to sequence these issues? And is there several? Is there one? Is there a primary one? Maybe there's a list of them, and they all have to be dealt with individually. But what exactly are they? Starting out from, number one, number two. I think we shared. Linda and I kind of just did this, and we had a list of 18. We had 18 of them, and there were 18 issues that were causing Linda a little bit of worry and fear. And so what we did then is, okay, now that we understand and we discuss it, are these in fact the ones? And we go to that person, like that son, or we're calling others to help us. Could you help me, first of all, identify what are the things that are causing me stress, and get it on the table? Okay, it's 1, it's 20, it's 18, it's 10. It's what are these things? Okay, hey, are these real? Yes. All right. Now, he said, start to process these one at a time. And you are looking at them, and then the next thing I do is say, okay, what do you know about this? What's the truth that you know about this? And there's a discussion about, well, my perspective on this, the reason that is causing me difficulty or stress is this. And you get to the truth of that. Okay, what's the truth of that? And you got to do each one at a time. By the way, this is why there might be several, and you don't even have time at the moment to do them all. But if you keep calling this fast, well, then let's get back to all of them. Let's make sure we get to all of them in a way that we're not distracted by other things. So you're not doing it while you're having a meal. You're not doing it while you're watching television. You're not doing it while you're working on business.
You're focused on it.
You're focused. That's what a fast is all about. Bring focus. And maybe that focus has to be done an hour at a time. But get through them all. Okay, what do you know is the truth about that? And interesting enough, there's two things that happen. By you coming around them, it brings them relief automatically.
Right.
Because, well, they're not
someone sharing the burden.
They're not alone anymore. And here's an important, very important thing. Do not bring solution. Because that's what we tend to do. Okay, all right, you got this problem. I tell you what, do this, this, and this, and we'll resolve it. Well, that person, first of all, interesting enough, isn't ready for the solution yet.
Right.
They've already been working on this by themselves. And by the way, your solution, you're just bringing another human perspective.
Right.
You're not leading them to God's solution. And likely your solution isn't the answer. You're actually compounding the problem. And we do this as parents. We do this as in our small groups. We compound the problem.
Right. With good intention often.
Sure, because
but the reality is it compounds it.
I'd like to release the problem. So, hey, do this, this, and this. And God said, well, you didn't ask me. And you're only going to make it worse. So don't go to that step. Don't bring your solution to it, but rather process. Well, what's the process? What are the issues? Number 2 is, what's the truth about those issues? What do you understand about those? Okay. We understand that. And by the way, that person who's, first of all, writing the issues, which could be me, and I'm writing the truth about, or speaking the truth about those issues, it starts to release the burden automatically, because I'm sharing it, I'm talking about it, I'm seeing it for what it is, and then you process that truth, and our role as a sacred assembly is to say, okay, this is what we understand about this, and let me repeat what I heard you say, what you see as truth, and I have another element of discernment or truth. Hey, do you see this? Like, for example, a person was recently dealing with a relationship issue, and they were talking about the relationship, and it's difficult, and I'm not sure about it, and I said, well, write it out, the truth. What's the issue? What's the truth? As they wrote it and then sent it to me, it was like, and we looked at it. I said, do you see what the issue is? And the person says, yeah, I kind of do. What? Well, it's my fear of commitment. Actually, the problem isn't her, it's me. I have a fear of commitment. Yes. Now we're getting to the issue of it.
Right.
Let's go process.
Which, by the way, you didn't have to tell him.
No.
By taking him to God's feet and helping him to process that with God, then God revealed that to him, and you were able to confirm that.
Yeah, because it comes out of just relax for a second. What do you think is you're dealing with? What's this? Okay, now write about it. What do you see as the truth of it? Tell me about it. Write about it. What's going on with you about this? Well, they do. And remember, when you give them permission to write the truth, interested enough, they do.
Right.
And the truth, remember the truth, God says, I'll guide you into the truth. And the truth will set you free, because I can get to the resolution of it. So as he did that, he writes it, and then I said, well, now that you've written it and now you read what you wrote, do you kind of see what the issue is? And yeah, I kind of do. And I could facilitate. Yes, I confirm that. It's about your fear of commitment. That's what's causing you anxiety. Okay, let's go talk about that. Now let's go to God and say, God, what would you have to say about that? I said, you are stuck in, you're trying to figure that out. And it's been complex, but it really isn't that complex, because now you could release figuring that out, because what does God want to do? He wants to break that yoke. He wants to bring you to freedom. And he says, and go down further, it says, now for you, what does it say? It says, don't keep focusing on the yoke. Okay, what does that mean? Well, now that we understand it, what does God want to do?
He wants to resolve it.
He wants to bring healing
and
to it.
bring freedom.
I want to bring resolution to this. So now, and this is what you would do next, is well, let's go see what God would have to say about that. Now that we understand the issue, and it's either we need wisdom from God. Okay, we got this thing, this opposition, this business issue, this circumstance that I can't get through. I think we're going to have, I believe, when we had Anna, your daughter, and her friend Reagan, they're coming on, I think, December the 9th, this week, actually.
This week, yeah.
You're going to hear her describe, I got into an anxiety. Yeah, what about? Well, choosing a school. And all the heaviness of that, and making the right decision, and what about, and how come, and okay, that's the issue. What did you do? Well, I went to God, and God said, let me guide you into my resolution. So what is necessary for that, because it's a real practical thing.
Right.
Well, I need to resolve that thing for you in a wisdom. In this case where I'm talking about, where he said, well, the issue is a fear of commitment. Okay, well, do you understand that's a soul, what I call a soul issue? It's not about this person.
Right.
It's going to be about any person.
Right.
Because you got,
and that's a place that he wants to bring healing so that you can step into what he does have for you, regardless of who it is.
Yeah. So let me bring healing to this. And so I could go and know that, okay, what does that look like in terms of Scripture? This is where the abiding plays in of, all right, let me guide you into a place where you can get into the Word and God can speak to healing of your fear of commitment.
Right.
So that you can be released from that. And I'll show you what that looks like. So we started that process. And this is I'm still in sacred assembly. So this is still a description of it. Go to those words, those scriptures, write out the scriptures. What do they say to you? And let's let God guide us into this. So he does. He gets led further, and he goes to the next step. And now the focus, interesting enough, and this is what the scripture in Isaiah says, and what you got to do for everybody. Either you have somebody help you do it if you're calling the sacred assembly, or if you're the one helping somebody else by calling the sacred assembly, you're facilitating the process. The next step is we're not going to focus anymore on the fear of commitment or the lack of what's going to happen to my selection of a school. Yeah, I know that. I know that's the yoke, yes. Our focus shifts to the resolution.
Right.
The healing of it. And so, okay.
And with expectation.
Expectation that God's going to resolve it. So, yes, it's about that. Let's go get into that. Let the Lord speak to us about that. We're not going to have you stay in, but I don't have commitment. Yeah, but I don't have commitment. Yeah, we know that. I'm not going to keep asking you and reminding you, you don't have commitment. That's what we're going to get healed from. What do we? And that's why he says in Isaiah 58, he says, shift to my resolution. Put your energy toward that. And then what you do is you facilitate and say, okay, let's go there. And we do. And as we develop further, it came out that, don't I have to decide that before I go further with anybody? Don't I have to have that decided? I said, no. Commitment comes from God resolving what the relationship is truly supposed to be, which are you supposed to enter into a committed relationship, when in this case would be marriage. Well, there's steps to that. You don't have to decide that up front. Let God show you that over time as he resolves your fear. Because, and we talked about, what's your real fear? And the same thing for Reagan when she's dealing with her school. What's the real fear? I'm going to make a mistake. And if I make a mistake, it could turn out really poorly. And I don't want to do that. And what if? God said, yeah, I know. But God says, actually, I confirm that. I don't want you making a mistake.
Right.
So you got to let me lead you. Now let me guide you into a process with this person that will come to a conclusion, either yes or no. And by the way, you would invite that person into that process. And I said, here's something really cool about it, is that if they say, I don't want to, either make the commitment or not, I said, what does that say to you? And he said, it means I'm not supposed to marry that person. Exactly.
Yeah.
Why? Well,
because that's not going to be the only thing that you come up against that you need to come together on.
Because then that means there's not a heart to process with God. And God's telling you that already. But if she says, yeah, I'd like to, which, by the way, in this case, this girl does, well, then let's go. And let's go let God confirm that this is meant to be. And he already knows the answer, either yes or no. He'll resolve it absolutely 100%, where I will work in your heart to overcome your fear and show you that, yes, you can be committed to this person, absolutely, because it's my will. Or I'm telling you both, no, this isn't my will. I don't want you to be committed to this person. But we got to trust that process. So we got to go further. So let's get into scripture about that. And now let's move further into it. And now he's taken them to another step. So I'm in sacred assembly with them. Actually, I'm now going to be with them both.
Right.
And hey, kids, do you have a heart to seek God's will as to whether or not this is supposed to be a committed relationship? Yes. Okay, great. Interesting enough, what happened? The guy's anxiety lessened.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Because, well, what's it about? It's step by step by step. And I'm going to stay in sacred assembly. And interesting enough, we're at a point with the two of us, three of us, is the time is now for you to start the process of finding out this answer, and you don't need to be fearful anymore. Let's go to God together, and I'm going to stay in sacred assembly with you. So the burden isn't on you. Let me help you take it step by step by step into the resolution of it, or like with Reagan, what you're doing with Anna and Reagan, and joining her and Anna with Reagan. Is they're at a place of the knocking stage, which is okay. I've got past my anxiety. Yes, I'm going to trust God for the answer. Now you will help them. You and Anna will help Reagan. Okay, let's go to the knocking stage. What's the truth? God will resolve it. Either the answer is yes or it's not. If it's not, well, he's got another answer for you. Let us help you, guide us into that. And you are staying in sacred assembly around a very practical thing, and say, I'll stay with you until what? You get an answer.
Until the resolution.
Until you get it resolved, so that what you're doing for that other party is, I'm going to stay with you. And I'm bringing two things. Great confidence. God's going to resolve this. And I'm inviting you to that. I know that you don't have that same confidence, but that's okay. I do. So stay with me and let me facilitate the process, and then stay with it step by step by step as God guides you into what's the truth, what's it really about, what's the next step. How do we bring wisdom to a practical issue? How do we bring truth to maybe a hard issue? And you would take, like for this son, it might be more than one. It might be numerous ones. You got to do this for every single one of them, and then get that person into a process of, all right, let's move toward the God's resolution, and not keep focusing on the problem, which is where they're stuck, and start processing, moving forward into the resolution phase, which is, what's the truth? What's the next step? What's the next step? What's the next step? And you stay in sacred assembly until you get a resolution. And it's a really beautiful thing. And by the way, you can call it and say, I need people around me to help me do that.
Absolutely.
And I can understand these steps. So, hey, would you people work with me on this? I'm going to write out the truth. I'm going to ask you to give me some insight and discernment about it. And then we know what the issue is. Now let's go pray together and seek together an answer, a resolution to it. And if you, like with this family for their child, is, and this is really important, because this is where the problems are. What we do, we tend to do one of two things. I just pray about it. Well, yeah, he's a mess. God, I hope you fix it. Well, we're not really involved at all, other than, well, I hope it works out. And God says, no, I need you to call a sacred assembly and facilitate the process. Or we go the other direction, and that is, I'm going to tell them exactly what they're supposed to do. And
Right.
they better do it because I know the answer. And if they do it, they'll get the
Mm-hmm.
answer, and they should do what I want. And God says, well, that doesn't work either.
That's not it either.
That's not it either. First of all, release the burden of you as a parent. Even as a parent, you don't need to have an answer. You just
Right.
need to provide the opportunity for us to together get the answer.
Mm-hmm.
And trust me, and I'll give you wisdom, and I'll tell you when to go in and go out. Now, there's another element to this, and that is Sabbath. So read the last few verses again. I think it's 11 through 14. Read those verses again, because he brings in the idea of Sabbath.
Right. And the Lord will guide you continually and satisfy your desire in scorched places and make your bones strong. And you shall be like a watered garden, like a spring of water whose waters do not fail.
Okay, and by the way,
And your
stop right there.
Sure.
So what does God say he's going to do?
That's really refreshment.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
you talk about no matter what kind of scorched places you're in, that you will have waters that don't fail, that living water,
Yeah.
and just that source of refreshment.
Yeah,
and
he's saying that I'm gonna restore to you the Garden of Eden. Because remember, the reason you're calling a fast, the reason you're calling a sacred assembly is I'm heavy-hearted, I'm yoked, I'm stuck, I can't get out of this. And he said, yeah, call it, come together, and trust me, I'm going to take this dry, difficult place. I'm going to break the yoke, and I'm going to create a beautiful Garden of Eden solution for you. Not only will it just get released, I'm leading you to the very, very best.
Right.
And I'm going to rebuild. He goes on, go ahead and read it, but he says, I'm going to rebuild what's been ruined. Go ahead and read that.
It says, and your ancient ruins shall be rebuilt. You shall raise up the foundations of many generations. You shall be called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of streets to dwell in. Keep going.
Okay, let's stop there, sir.
Yeah, because that's a loaded verse. That's so much beautiful promise. I hate to even skip past it.
Now this is really interesting. Where did you start out?
You started out with bonds of wickedness, heavy yokes,
I'm yoked, oppressed, and I'm in ruins. Things aren't working. That's why you're worried and fearful. He said, okay,
right.
If you allow me and walk with me, not only am I going to resolve it, I'm going to call you what?
The repairer of the breach. And I see that as like the breaking of generational curses.
Yes.
Even
I'm going to make you, not only am I going to do this for you, I'm going to move you to a position where you start doing this for others. You will be the restorer of the breach. Okay, now how am I going to be the restorer of the breach?
Because once you experience it, you can then give it away and walk others through the same process.
Because two things. Well, I'll stay in that understanding that when I go to fear, like Linda had this list of worry. Okay, well, let's remember. Let's go back and call a sacred assembly for the two of us, and we're gonna go through this Isaiah 58, and we're gonna let God break the yokes and give us resolution. Let's process this. Remember that it works for us. And so we can receive it when? All the time. We're going to have to all the time. Now, again, why? The world's full of what?
Full of trouble.
Difficulty and
one
trouble.
ends, the next one's going to come.
Yeah. And we have this 18, and we've got many, many, many resolved. Guess what? Already, we got a few more. But we learned again, well, wait a minute, bring focus. Don't get distracted. Come together, spend the energy to call a fast, a sacred assembly, and bring focus to this, and let me do this. And he said, now, as you learn this, and you apply it to your life, which by the way, has to be. You can't teach this to somebody else unless you know it.
Right.
It's
Absolutely.
not hypothetical. If I can't say to you, you know what, it actually has worked for us,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm still in anxiety, fear, and worry. I tried. Yeah, I know all that truth, but nothing really changes.
Right.
I don't have the privilege to say
Mm-hmm.
anything because I'm not a restorer of the breach. I'm a recipient of the problem.
Right.
Uh, but as I learn it, and now I can offer these kids, for example, hey, guess what? Let me call a sacred assembly.
Mm-hmm.
Let's walk together step by step by step. And God's using me as a restorer of the breach. And that's what will happen with this couple that has a son is, well, let's learn this for our son.
Mm-hmm.
And you focus, you bring attention to it. When that happens, this is cool. You, parent, that called the sacred assembly, you learned how to be a repairer of the breach. Guess what?
Mm-hmm.
Your son will too.
Oh, that's
Because
the beautiful thing,
yeah,
because he's learning it firsthand as
because
well,
he's
and then he'll
learning
be
it.
able to give it away.
And then guess what? He's got friends that are in the same boat. Well, he can
Mm.
teach them the same thing, and that's what God is trying to use the sacred assembly for. Is I want to show you the truth of this, the reality of it,
Mm-hmm.
the beauty of it. When you do, you become the restorer of the
Mm-hmm.
breach. Why? Because you'll give this away when all the
All the
time,
time.
all the time, because that's how it multiplies out. Is
Mm-hmm.
you have to learn it so that this parent would say, okay, the burden isn't on me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I can't and don't need to take on the heaviness of fixing this problem.
Right.
There is a problem. I am going to call a sacred assembly, and I'm going to start the process with, okay, all right, I understand. Just write out what they are. Tell me what they are.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What's the truth about those? Okay. Now you shift it. Okay. Now that we get that, we understand that their issues are this.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to go with you and have God show us resolution to each one of these. And we're going
Mm-hmm.
to take it step by step by step, ask, seek, and knock until we get a resolution. And as they do, the son will automatically start to get some release
Mm-hmm.
because there's somebody walking with him, not telling him what to do or blaming him or you better shape up.
Mm-hmm.
Rather, we're going to go with you and we're going to stay with you, and we're going to stay in this fast. And remember,
Mm-hmm.
it's just periodic, day by day, week by week, until we get it resolved.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, guess what? It gets resolved. And it's
Right.
like, hallelujah, man, look at this. This is fantastic. God broke that yoke and created a
Mm.
watered garden and called me the repairer of the breach. I mean,
Mm.
it's really
Just
remarkable.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's really a process that you can facilitate for
Mm-hmm.
somebody else, or you could call yourself and say, well, I'm in that position. I'm the one that's anxious and fearful. Okay, call people around you to
Mm-hmm.
facilitate it. Take it through these steps, and stay in Isaiah 58 and really understand it and trust it. It will happen. It will be absolute. And we'll talk.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get into tomorrow. I brought up this issue of Sabbath. This is an important piece of the process. So we'll talk
Mm-hmm.
about that tomorrow. We'll bring that up and get into further detail about the aspect of why does he bring in Sabbath to this discussion.
Right.
It's really interesting. So we'll get into
This is awesome. I hope all the listeners enjoyed as much. You see my long page of notes here.
that.
um, I was madly taking notes on this as Rich was speaking too. So great stuff. Thank you so much for sharing. I love seeing it get down to the practical
Yep.
nitty gritty too, and
Yep.
how we can begin to really apply it and live it out.
Yeah,
You
it
know.
really can. So if you got questions, put it on the YouTube or questions at afjministry.com. Maybe you want to know more about exactly how it works, or what about this? I got a situation. We're happy to talk about it, even come back and talk about it. So send it in, and we'll be happy to do that. And Kathy, we'll pick this up tomorrow with Sabbath and the import
Sabbath.
and,
Yeah,
what
looking
does that
forward to
look like? Because
this.
it's really interesting.
And it's definitely a lost, something that's not spoken about enough.
No.
So excellent. Thank you so much, Rich. And thank you for joining us, everyone. If you enjoyed today, be a friend and tell a friend. As you can tell, this is getting super practical and just very much right where so many of us are at right now. So I think this is very timely that God has brought this up.
Yep.
So continue to join us and invite your friends, and have a great day. Thanks so much.
Yeah, we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Come and See, your podcast for truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by All for Jesus Living Waters Ministry. Send us your questions and comments, and tune in tomorrow for more answers to your personal questions about living life in God's truth. Remember, God's will is best and none better. His truth brings peace in this world of chaos.